What's up, guys? Our wrestling podcast back at you with another episode. This is Dave Vicious along with Justin Total Package and Craig the British Bulldog, bringing you our perspective on the world of professional wrestling. No inside sources, no ties to the industry, just stories from those diehards sharing opinions with you. Today's topic is Eddie Guerrero 2004. For audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts, or watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel. On social media, can you give us a follow on Instagram at O.W.P 2019 or on Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast? Jess, why 2004? Was that a good year?
Because I've told everybody,
I know it was
I've told everybody that doing a legacy is super emotional and hard for me. And I've been putting off doing an Eddie Guerrero legacy for numerous reasons because I have to get it right. I don't want to half-ass it, especially for him. And there are three things that make me majorly emotional. I cried during Our Own Heart legacy. I cry every time I have to watch a Chris Farley documentary. And Eddie Guerrero, I'm pretty sure that Eddie Guerrero will be my third thing that I will cry on. Because like he is somebody that when I first started watching him, I realized I'm not a wrestling expert by any stretch.
You are.
And I just been watching it since I was 10 years old. And so I fell in love with footwork and the way wrestlers work. You know, after I realized wrestling was not real and predetermined, you realize that these are actors and actresses that are also athletes, and their footwork is everything. And the gelling with people. There's a lot of wrestlers that are great workers and that are technical wizards that never get the spotlight they deserve because they don't have charisma, or you get saddle-horned in that area of like, well, you're a good worker, so you're always going to be a good hand, so you're going to do jobs and put the real stars over. And but I loved their work. I loved watching wrestlers like that work. And when I first saw Eddie, I first saw him in WCW. And then I went back later and saw his stuff a couple years earlier in ECW, and I didn't really watch his Mexican wrestling stuff until later. I noticed how he moved and how great he was, and I was like, I'd never seen anybody. I watched him time people out, and it's hard to describe the way he would watch his opponent and the way if he wrestled an older Ric Flair or a younger guy, he adjusted, and that's a super talent that like people don't understand. Like when a wrestler is full of themselves and they get in there and they're in their prime and they know they have to fucking hit a home run every time, a lot of wrestlers will leave it to their opponent you got to catch up to my style. Guerrero, every time I saw him, he watched his opponent and he would morph to theirs. And he knew I can't go faster than them because the match will fall apart or it'll be super boring. And I realized that from him from an early on when I started watching him about how great he was. And it's something that you don't see in a lot of people. You just don't. And there's very few people I can even say right now that I feel have that ability, to get in there with people and just time them and be like, I'm going to be you, and I'm going to either dumb myself down. I don't mean that in a bad way, because if you're in there with an older wrestler, they're a shell of who they used to be, but their character might be so over that they're still relevant. And you have to get in there and learn to work with them. And I would watch him do it time after time. And he won me over. And I was like, God, even when he was just the vanilla babyface in WCW when he first got there and he had no personality, to the beginning of Latino Heat in WCW when he was LWO and all that stuff. And yes, folks, Rey Mysterio did not start the LWO. It was Eddie Guerrero that started in WCW. And so it's going to be emotional for me to make a legacy. So I'm being a pussy, and I'm doing 2004. So that's easy to do. That was my long-winded explanation to get to why we're doing this episode.
My joke is old. My joke is old at this point, but yeah, I would cry during Beverly Hills Ninja as well. Sorry.
But I just there's something about Eddie from an early when I first saw him, in American wrestling, which was WCW, and then I got the joy of going back and looking at his other stuff, where I watched him and I was like, God. And then listening to Bischoff in 2023 tell a story about how he met with some people and they're like, What do you mean you don't know Eddie Guerrero? And he's like, not really. And they're like, you need to hire Eddie. And this was when he was younger. And Bischoff's like,
Yeah.
why? And he's like, it doesn't matter why. Like, you'll learn when you get
He's
him.
that good. You'll figure it out.
We will foot half his salary. So if you give us some dates where he could still work in Mexico with us and all that stuff, and he would do Japan stuff and all that, then we will. So basically, if Eddie had $100,000 salary, I'm just throwing that number out there, $100,000. WCW only had to pay 50, and then AAA would pay the other 50 because they're like, we know that he needs to be exposed
Yeah.
to the American audience. We know, and he was special from there, and his family, the Guerrero
That's with the
family, is
Art Bar
legendary.
stuff, right? Like he was tagging up with Art
Yes,
Bar.
yeah,
Like they're
and
American type, yeah.
yes, and so they knew that he was so special, and the Guerrero family is super legendary. But like they knew that Eddie was ready for American television in the early to mid '90s, and so Bischoff's like, okay, if you're gonna foot half the fucking thing, I'll take him. So it was like, and the rest is history. It's an overused phrase, but it's true. So like he just like took off, and from the second I would watch his footwork and the way his timing was just, it was fucking impeccable. Like he just understood. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
you can't teach that. Like you can flourish it, and when you recognize it, you can grow it, but you can't teach it. He just understood. Like that his eyes were all over the place and he understood every movement that was going on. You'll never see it again. Anyway, I probably would cut
Let's
most of this, but
jump in.
like
Before 2004, Guerrero had an up and down ride with the WWF and WWE since this came over from WCW in 2000. He was arrested for DUI at the end of 2001. He was released by the company then. He would wrestle in the indie scene, Ring of Honor, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and the first portion of '02. He would then return to WWE in April of '02 and regain the confidence of McMahon through '03. He teamed with his cousin Chavo Guerrero and won the SmackDown Tag Team titles as Los Guerreros. Heavily underrated tag team
and
there.
all before this too, I didn't even talk about China, Mamacita, Latino Heat.
Oh,
Like
so that was all before this.
that was all before like
Wow.
2004. Like yeah,
Okay.
that was
Yeah,
all
and
before.
it was
But
phenomenal
So
stuff.
he was
what's
struggling
the
with
point?
demons.
Before we start, what's the point of 2004 for you? The
That's
year
when
he
he
peaked?
Yes, that's when
It's
he won the world title from Lesnar, and like it
yeah,
changed. Like we finally got to see Eddie Guerrero at the top. Like he finally like
yeah,
achieved it. This is probably his best year. Like,
yeah.
Got it.
and he's had
This
great
is
years, but this, as far as like career achievement and being the
Hmm.
guy
this is the
and
year.
beating his demons and all that
Yeah.
stuff, like this was like
What he
the
could have
year.
been. This was the year that
Yes,
he should.
yeah.
He would return to WWE in '02. I'm sorry, we were talking about that. In early '04, Chris Benoit jumped to the Raw brand after winning the Royal Rumble match, using his title shot to go for Triple H's World Heavyweight Championship. Guerrero won a 15-man Royal Rumble match in the January 29th '04 episode of SmackDown to earn a shot at the WWE Championship. And after becoming the number one contender, Guerrero elevated himself to the main event.
Kurt Angle gonna suplex Eddie Guerrero.
And he's going, and he's done.
Eddie Guerrero's gonna be eliminated here. Eddie Guerrero just countered. It brought Kurt Angle back into the ring.
And how's he do?
Kurt Angle eliminated. Eddie Guerrero has got a shot at the title.
Here is your winner, Eddie Guerrero.
Can you believe Eddie Guerrero? How the hell did Eddie do? Oh man, Kurt's upset.
And began feuding with that champion Brock Lesnar. Now, Brock Lesnar, we still see him today. Guy's a beast. There's doesn't some anything's gonna come from it. But at No Way Out on February 15th of '04, Guerrero defeated Lesnar in a shocking upset victory in the main event to win the WWE Championship. That's the SmackDown Championship.
I don't even know if they knew at that point that Lesnar wasn't going to resign, because this is right before WrestleMania 20, the infamous match where him and Goldberg were both booed out of the building and people took the match over, whatever. I don't know if they knew in February if Lesnar was leaving. Maybe they did. And Vince is just like, give Guerrero a chance, which is amazing because of the injuries and the substance abuse and all that stuff. Like he left for a while and came back, and then, like I said, Vince got more confidence in him because Guerrero was undeniable. His charisma was just fucking ridiculous. Like, and he was a wonderful wrestler. Like he was just second to none. Like I said before about his footwork and everything. So, finally, when he realized the character he wanted to be, he was funny with China. Then he was funny with Los Guerreros, but Vince was like, you got to be emotional. You can be funny. You can be a one-dimensional character, and that's great. but Guerrero had something that like people believed in, and the Hispanic community they're very passionate about their athletes. And there was Rey Mysterio as an example, Pedro Morales as an example, and Guerrero was like just people wanted to love him, especially if you're a Latino, because he was this story that people could relate to. You overcome, and and he always believed in his heritage. He would always put the flag on him somewhere. He would always like speak little Spanish like excerpts in his interviews or whatever to remind people, I'm still yours. I'm still with you. And I think that was super important. And so like for Vince to be like, just let's go. That match when he beat Lesnar, I'll never forget the crowd. And the right in the center of the hard camera was a row of fans that had signs that spelled out Eddie. You know, one fan held E, one hand other fans held the DDIE, and like it was just right in the fucking as he won the title and that whole building shaking, you see Eddie like in the crowd. And I'll never forget that because like it's just those are moments where you're like, fuck, like, and you never saw it coming. When he pinned him, people were like, no fucking way. Like, really? Like, and yeah, like it was real. Like, and it's insane. And it was a WWE championship. It wasn't the shitty, World Heavyweight Championship, which I know a lot of good people held the World Heavyweight Championship, but like it was the WWE Championship, which was the big one.
Come on, Eddie! Come on, Eddie! Eddie to the top rope! Eddie cheated! Frog splash! Frog splash! Come on, Eddie! Get Eddie, do it! 2! Yes! Eddie Guerrero is champion!
Here is your winner and the new WWE Champion, Eddie Guerrero.
Eddie Guerrero going to WrestleMania as the WWE champion!
So this victory made him a Triple Crown and Grand Slam champion in the process. So he had, if I got it right, he's got the tag champs, IC title, and a world championship under his belt at this point.
And he won the European Championship too, which for a while that was kind of like the Grand Slam. I think Shawn Michaels was the first one to win all the titles. That goddamn
Sorry.
candy up there.
I had a cute
yeah.
spider.
I want to say that he was one of the ones that that with the European title, which is even more rare. Like Shawn Michaels was one of the only ones to win the IC Tag Team World Heavyweight Intercontinental Champion and the European. So Guerrero also won the European title too.
I was just wearing the shirt that we're going to talk about next. I wore it all day long until I put on my Summer Freaking Time shirt. But his next feud was with Kurt Angle, whom he defeated at WrestleMania 20 to retain his title in his first big defense. At the end of the event, Guerrero celebrated in the ring with his longtime friend Chris Benoit, who had just won the World Heavyweight Championship. I got to go back on this a little bit. I gotta talk about this for a minute because this is the infamous boot, right? The boot where we think that Angle is destroying his ankle in the whole process.
Well, Angle was destroying his ankle, but as Guerrero would get a breather, you would see him unlace the boot by a couple eyelets. And then he would keep
every time.
And then Angle would beat it up again, and then he would cut Angle off, and then crawl away and just untuck the laces a little bit more. And he would just doing it the last 5 minutes or so of the match, and then knowing in his mind he's going for my ankle, he's going to go do the ankle lock. That's what Angle does. So when Angle finally got the ankle lock, the boot was all the way unlaced, and he pulled his foot out of it. And Angle was like, "What?" Angle looked at the boot like, "What the fuck?" And then he pulled him in and small packaged him. He small packaged him and pinned him. And it's just Eddie's charm. It's just so good. It was such a fitting ending.
I wonder
to
who
that
thought
match.
of that. Who thought of that ending?
It was excellent. It was super excellent. And
I feel like Eddie. I feel like who else would think of that?
They would probably still have. They had producers at that point. I wonder if it's like a Michael Hayes or a
Patterson. I know Patterson was there, but I think Patterson did Angle and Shawn that night. I don't know who did.
04?
Patterson did the main event. Patterson did the Benoit, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels match, but I'm not sure who did Eddie and
Just
Angle.
that's beautiful.
But again, though, people might produce it, but I feel like Eddie and Angle are bringing that to the table. And they just got to figure out how to make it work, But yeah, in March he started the feud with fellow Texan John Bradshaw Layfield, JBL.
Fuck that guy.
I did not mean to bring the episode down.
After JBL interrupted Guerrero's title match with Booker T, the rivalry would soon turn personal. In a non-televised live event, JBL caused Guerrero's mother to suffer a kayfabe heart attack. At Judgment Day, Guerrero defended his WWE title against JBL, retaining the title after getting himself disqualified, hitting JBL with the championship title. The match witnessed Guerrero bleed heavily midway through in the match as a result of Guerrero performing a blade job after a stiff headshot.
Jesus
ringside
Christ.
with a chair with JBL. By the way, Jess, you and I were at this event.
You, me, and Nathan were there. We were at the Staples Center, and yes,
You guys were there live for that blood fest?
Yes.
Yeah, it was
Jesus.
bad. I
we
honestly
saw. We
thought
were like
that-
midway
I'm
up.
like,
We
are
had
they
good
gonna have to take
seats.
him
We
to the
were.
hospital.
Yeah, we were midway up in the arena, and we were like all like, "That's a lot of blood." Like, I mean, it was like
So
a
you
lot
could
of
tell
blood. Like,
by sitting there
yeah,
with
it
the
was
monitors that
It was all over the ring. It was all over the ring. It was horrible.
Yeah,
Like, I've never
That's
seen
awesome.
someone bleed this much.
That's awesome.
Period. We were actually genuinely concerned for Guerrero towards the end. I'm like, they might have to cart him out of here. It was bad. Blood was everywhere.
Yeah.
The match itself was great, by the way, too. But again, I believe that Eddie was the reason for those JBL matches being as good as they were.
and by the way, we are one of the very few people that got to see a Mordecai entrance.
That's
That was when they were pushed. Because it was the brand split, so they were trying to make new stars, and Mordecai came down. He beat Scotty 2 Hotty, I believe.
I thought he was a WCW guy.
No, Mordecai was WWE,
Jesus
and he
Christ.
was SmackDown brand. He beat Scotty 2 Hotty at the time. Very flash in the pan.
I said, you walk down that aisle and give me what is mine, the WWE Championship, now, or I will make you bleed some more, Eddie. I will put you back in the hospital. You know what, Holmes? You're right. I'm going to show everybody what a great man my mom raised. I said, I'm going to go down and hand you what you deserve, a good kicking.
Oh, boy, Eddie, think this over, Eddie.
At the Great American Bash, Guerrero defended the title against JBL in a Texas bull rope match. JBL
let's
won,
bleed some more.
After Kurt Angle, who was a general manager of SmackDown, reversed the decision after Guerrero appeared to have retained the title there.
Eddie dives over. Eddie Guerrero dives over and
Eddie, as you can see, Eddie, as we can all see, that John Bradshaw Layfield's shoulder touched before your hand touched. Now the rules state, now listen to me, I don't make the rules, but the rules state that it doesn't matter which part of your body touches. All that matters is who touches first. Eddie, I'm sorry. I apologize from the bottom of my heart. I am sorry, Eddie. But as the general manager of SmackDown, I have to announce that the winner of this match is the new WWE Champion, John Bradshaw Layfield.
oh my God, wow.
At SummerSlam, Guerrero lost to Angle after submitting to his ankle lock, getting a little payback. Guerrero then allied himself with the Big Show. Each week, Angle and his new allies, Luther Reigns, is that right?
Yeah, Luther Reigns.
And Mark
don't remember him
Jindrak
either.
began targeting Guerrero and Big Show. Guerrero defeated Reigns in a single match at No Mercy. And then general manager Theodore Long, good old Teddy, booked this elimination match between a team led by Guerrero and a team led by Angle. Guerrero's team consisted of himself, Big Show, Cena, replacing Rey Mysterio and Rob Van Dam. That team defeated Angle's team at Survivor Series. Guerrero, along with Booker T and The Undertaker, then challenged JBL for a WWE Championship in a fatal four-way in the upcoming pay-per-view Armageddon. Along the way, Guerrero found a partner in Booker T there. Sorry, I don't know if I'm reading this wrong. You guys are laughing or
Yeah,
you're
you're
It's
messing up a
goddamn
little
Craig
bit.
right now.
Yeah.
You're doing
Nope,
fine.
not my fault.
What, should I reread it? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
No, you're
definitely.
fine.
Start again.
No.
Guerrero. I'm going to reread it. You can edit how you want. Guerrero, along with Booker T and The Undertaker, then challenged JBL for a WWE Championship match in a fatal four-way for the upcoming pay-per-view Armageddon. Along the way, Guerrero found a partner in Booker T. At Armageddon in December of 2004, Guerrero and Booker's initial teamwork broke away, and the match ended with JBL pinning Booker following the clothesline from hell, which I know we love it and we hate it because we hate JBL, but that clothesline is something fierce.
So I do. Listen, we hear a lot of stories from people who have written books or done shoot interviews that JBL is a disgusting bully. However, you'll also hear from, I think, a lot of corporate people like Bruce Pritchard, who is they're very close friends. Him and JBL are, and I was like, I think JBL, all the actual other bullies like JBL because bullies like bullies. Um, and JBL made me sour after Guerrero passed, and he was trying to really push himself. Was like, I was really close to Eddie. Eddie's the one that approved all those storylines, like and originally, and I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't listen. Like, I'm, I'm, I'm leaning towards I hate JBL still, but like I do know that wrestling really does a good job at making you hate people. But I think JBL is really a hateable person. I've heard enough stuff of JBL being a bully and knocked out by Joey Styles and finally, you know what I mean? Like to where I'm like, no, JBL I think was just a bully and a dickhole. And the other people, the corporate people
Well,
like
Blue World
Bruce and
Order, all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and Vince and Bruce, they'll defend JBL because they're bullies too. So I don't want to hate JBL because my nature as a human being is I don't want to hate people. I don't. Like I really don't want people to be bad. But I think that JBL was just a cocksucker. And
God
I
damn.
don't have proof of this, but I think JBL used Guerrero after he passed to try to make us feel that I was really good friends with him. We were just doing a great job at fooling you.
Of course he
think that
did.
you're
Of course
I think
he
that you're a
did.
dick, and I think that you only befriended Guerrero because it benefited you, and you were in the world title picture at the time. So yeah, of course you backed off.
Which
and
by
you
the
were
way, without Eddie and without
Yeah.
that
Have you ever
whole
heard?
character change-
There's been no biography of how great a guy a JBL was. It's
and
all
what's the announcer?
Justin Roberts. Just absolutely
Justin
bullied by
Roberts.
him.
Like said same thing. So many people have written stuff in their books about what a cocksucker he is. So after Guerrero passed and JBL just really fucking laid it on about what they actually were good friends and all that, I was like, I really hope that you're not using his death as something to catapult your career. I really hope. I still to this day want to believe that he didn't do that, but I've heard enough shit about JBL where I wouldn't be surprised, but I still have no proof, so I
right.
can't really like put a period at the end of
Right.
that sentence. But fuck JBL.
I'll
I think
even
is
I'll
what I'm
even
trying
put
to say.
a more like that's already kind of a tough way to end it. I might end it on a tougher note unless you guys recover.
I know we're not.
I would argue that while 04 was his best year, I think
Didn't he? When did he pass? In 05, 06?
I thought it was
05?
06.
Yeah, maybe one of the. I can't remember when.
Because he passed. Well, I know he passed. It might have been 05 or early 06 because Benoit passed in 06. And a lot of people would relate Eddie's death to Chris's rampage.
It was
was,
05, it was 05 then. It was 05, I think.
Yeah. So it's either late 05 and early 06 because I can't even think they were more than 6-8 months apart.
Yeah,
Because-
he died November 13th, 05. So a
Yeah.
year after his greatest year ever, like he died.
Yep. And then that spun off Benoit into a spiral, and because they were doing the same stuff together.
Yeah.
Whatever the regiment was, they were doing it together because they had been up together. I hate to bring some because
And they were close friends, yeah.
But we're talking about New Japan too. They were together in New Japan, WCW, and now here. They went through the cycles together.
Yeah, and again, this is why I avoid the legacy of Eddie Guerrero because like when we start really laying into the end of his career and everything, I don't know how strong I could be or how much I can keep it together because I love him so much and the thing is like why I think he's so special is I know why the Latino community loves him, but I'm not Latino, but he touched me in that sense. Like I saw his magic, and it's like as a lover of pro wrestling,
a few shirts I
was just
continue to update. If that shirt wears out, I will buy another Eddie Guerrero shirt. It's
I
a
can't-
Viva La Raza, and I don't care what people think of me when I wear it. Like
we will
if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's your problem.
We will do a legacy of Eddie Guerrero one day when I'm strong enough, like and I can do it and muscle through it and just write it properly, like I did Sting. 'Cause I'm very proud of our Sting one that we did.
In the words of Double J, you have to sober up, bitch. To do
Yeah.
that.
It's someone like it transcends Lucha Libre. So he transcends an entire generation. Like Lucha Libre is an entire generation of wrestling, which
that was also,
it's like
Craig,
Japan, North
that was just a
America, and
portion.
Lucha Libre, right? Like,
That was just a portion of what he
And
did.
so
It was
he-
just part of his arsenal.
but for him to come over here and succeed like he did, and to break those barriers and not wear a mask, and to have his long hair and to be generational.
He was always
and
Eddie,
to
right?
succeed as a cruiserweight and then come over to WWE and then be heavyweight champion and then have this year and then have the struggle. He could do anything, and he still was struggling with the demons and he didn't quite make it. And so God bless, and God knows what he was going through, but like, holy shit. And that's all we care about. Like as fans, like we just gravitate towards people that transcend and they just sacrifice themselves for fucking us, right? And for fucking watching them and being the geniuses that they are. Like he could have been something special and something got lost in his last kind of years, and who knows, but like
cut short. Yeah,
for sure. Like, and why? And like, who knows why? But like,
well, I know why.
But in his whatever demons he was carrying, he still transcended everything and was probably the greatest Latin wrestler.
You're not
ever,
you're not 6'6",
right?
you're not 300 pounds, you're not Hulk Hogan, you're not Sting, you're not Luger, you're not. I mean, you're Eddie Guerrero. On your best day, you should probably weigh about 215. I think he bolted up like 240, 250 towards the end of it.
He didn't need a mask, which was the currency of,
with the exception of New Japan, right? Did he wear it in New Japan? I know Benoit
for a while. I think for a bit he wore a mask. Yeah,
but that's exception, Craig. Most of the time, to your point, absolutely.
Right.
He was Eddie. That's who he was. He was Eddie. I'm not some mysterious guy.
He really figured it out, like the American style, and
I would say he figured out the charisma of it, because when you watch him in WCW, the match work was never a problem. The guy was on point.
No. And if you convince Vince as a small guy with a mullet and a Hispanic guy who
with no arms at the time, like no build, I mean, compared to what he was towards the end,
an absolute gem and a genius and a hell of a man, an athlete, like my God.
Always missed.
But it is that X factor, like Jess said, it's like it's the Owen, it's the Eddie, it's the Chris Farley. It's like the people that like they shouldn't have passed when they should have passed. They should have transcended what they were doing, man.
It's that shooting star, man. They just burned out too fast.
Yep.
I mean, that's really what it is. Chris Farley is such a great example of all of that. John Belushi's another one. Who knows what would have seen if he had lived another 10, 20 years.
And those guys, like, Farley and Belushi were both 33.
Mm-hmm.
33. So we have outlasted that by 15 years. But imagine burning out at 33.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And then burning out, just being gone. Like, just, wow. Yeah, it's tough. For audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts. Or watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel. On social media, can you give us a follow on Instagram at O.W.P 2019 or on Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast? For the O.W.P, this is Dave, Jess, and Craig signing off. Have a good one.